with writer-producer John Hughes, who came up with the idea during a chaotic attempt to get his own family ready for a trip to Europe. While making a checklist, he joked to himself, "Well, I'd better not forget my kids." Then came the thought that changed everything. What if a 10-year-old actually was left behind? What would he do? Hughes started scribbling ideas while sitting on the floor surrounded by half-packed suitcases. In that one burst of inspiration, he wrote nearly 8 pages of notes, the blueprint for what would eventually become Home Alone.
What they did to Macaulay Culkin is pure evil. Video by Tell Us More. Yeah, man. So you already know Home Alone kid was the legend. Watch Home Alone, man. You already know it's Christmas. So if you watching Home Alone right now, then we're about to find out what happened to that kid, man.
Everyone knows Home Alone, the Christmas classic released over 35 years ago, starring a 9-year-old Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister. We all remember the face, the wide eyes, the scream, the kid who outsmarted 2 burglars and accidentally became a holiday icon. But almost no one remembers what happened to the boy behind it all. Home Alone didn't just become a seasonal staple. For millions, it became a piece of their childhood, a warm, reliable flash of nostalgia. And that nostalgia makes the real story behind its star even more jarring. Because the truth is, Macaulay Culkin never wanted this life. Acting wasn't his dream. It was his father's. Kit Culkin was a man whose own ambitions had slipped away long before Macaulay was born, and he pushed all of his children into performing, hoping one of them would achieve what he couldn't. When it turned out to be Macaulay, the quiet, gentle middle kid, his pride twisted into something else. Resentment, control, a jealousy so overwhelming it would shape Macaulay's entire childhood. Within just a few years, Macaulay became the most recognizable child on Earth. His face was everywhere. Posters, lunchboxes, late-night interviews. He became a fascination for millions, including the most iconic pop star in the world. And then, without warning, he disappeared. No scandal, no public breakdown, no farewell tour. One day, Hollywood's golden child was simply gone. To the outside world, it looked like he vanished at the height of his success. But privately, Macaulay was suffocating, desperate for an exit from the spotlight, and even more desperate to escape the person who dominated every part of his life. And when he stepped away, Hollywood didn't chase him. Instead, the tabloids filled the silence with whatever sold: drug addiction, overdoses, homelessness, even rumors of his death. But the truth was stranger and darker than all of them. This is the story of how the most successful child actor in history became a prisoner of his own family, how Hollywood tried to finish the job, and how, against all odds, he found a way out. Macaulay Culkin grew up in a family of 7 kids: Shane, Dakota, Macaulay, Kieran, Quinn, Christian, and Rory, all packed into a cramped railroad apartment on East 94th Street and 2nd Avenue in New York City. The home was barely suitable for a couple. It was just a hallway with no separating doors except for the bathroom, which didn't even have a lock. All 7 kids shared a single bedroom, with multiple bunk beds squeezed tightly against the walls. It wasn't the kind of place built for raising 1 child, let alone 7. But the Culkins kept having kids anyway. The poverty was real. Mac, as he prefers to be called, would even pick coins off movie theater floors just to help the family get by. It was no way to live, but his father had a plan. Kit Culkin's acting career stalled before it ever took off. The peak of his resume was being an extra in West Side Story on Broadway in 1961 and a minor part in Hamlet in 1964. Then came the moment that ended what little progress he thought he'd made. While playing Gloucester in an off-Broadway production of King Lear, he closed his eyes to stay in character after Gloucesters are gouged out. He got so lost in the performance that he didn't notice he was veering toward the edge of the stage. He fell into the first row, injured himself, and had to drop out of the production. He never recovered from the humiliation. Instead of letting the dream die, Kit shifted it onto his kids. His oldest son, Shane, was supposed to become the performer he never was, fulfilling Kit's lifelong dream and solving the family's financial problems. Mac was just dragged along. Friends of the family ran a small theater called the Light Opera of Manhattan, and whenever a production needed a kid, Kit would ask, "What age and what gender? We've got 7 of them right over here." The children were essentially used as stage props, but then something unexpected happened. Macaulay turned out to be really good, better than Shane, who Kit was actually trying to promote. Producers noticed him immediately. The timing, the expressions, the fearlessness. Even on the smallest stages, he stood out in ways Kit hadn't anticipated, and suddenly, the afterthought brother was booking almost everything he auditioned for. Kit's focus shifted entirely toward Mac, who started landing stage roles, TV spots, and small film parts throughout the 80s. And before long, he began getting real work. First came Rocket Gibraltar, then Uncle Buck.
Hey, how you doing?
Who are you?
Oh, I
I'm your
remember
Uncle
this.
Buck.
Do I have an uncle?
Uncle Buck made $67 million at the box office and changed the entire family's financial situation overnight. From that moment on, the household depended on the income of a child. And even though Kit still didn't fully understand what everyone else saw in Macaulay, he understood one thing clearly. Mac was his ticket, his way into the mainstream success he'd never achieved. But no one could have anticipated what would come next. The story of Home Alone started well before Macaulay Culkin became the face of every Christmas season. It began with writer-producer John Hughes, who came up with the idea during a chaotic attempt to get his own family ready for a trip to Europe. While making a checklist, he joked to himself, "Well, I'd better not forget my kids." Then came the thought that changed everything. What if a 10-year-old actually was left behind? What would he do? Hughes started scribbling ideas while sitting on the floor surrounded by half-packed suitcases. In that one burst of inspiration, he wrote nearly 8 pages of notes, the blueprint for what would eventually become Home Alone. And there was never any question about who would play Kevin McAllister.
Boy, got
After
that
working with
spur
Mac
of the
on Uncle
moment
Buck,
idea.
Hughes had written the entire script specifically for him. He knew Mac had that rare mix of innocence, timing, and charisma that could carry a movie.
I can't seem to find my toothbrush, so I'll pick one up when I go out today. Other than that, I'm in good shape.
When Home Alone was released in November
Just to let y'all know, man, y'all gotta act on the spur of the moment ideas, bro. You make your millions, man. That boy about to go on a trip and just started joking around like, oh yeah, what if I leave my kids? Turned into a whole movie. Made millions.
1990, it didn't just succeed, it became a phenomenon. It shot up to become the 3rd highest grossing film of all time, behind only E.T. and Star Wars. It earned nearly $500 million at the
everybody know
worldwide box
about
office.
E.T.
The
I
industry
never
even
watched
coined a
Star
phrase
Wars.
for how badly other films were overshadowed. They'd been Home Aloned. Overnight, a 9-year-old kid became one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. But Mac's early interviews reveal something else. He wasn't swept up in the excitement. He wasn't starstruck. He wasn't even especially animated about any of it.
Hey, Mac, how you doing? This is Mac.
Can we call you Mac?
Sure.
Thank
Jump
you.
up here.
Very nice to meet you.
I mean, this is it, pal. You are a bona fide star as of right now. The #1 box office movie of the weekend. Nice to have you on the show.
Okay.
So how you doing?
Good.
You happy about this success?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all in a day's work, isn't it?
Maybe he was nervous, but more likely, he was just numb to the whole thing. Acting wasn't a dream he chased, it was a routine he'd been placed into. He was along for the ride, and everyone else was steering. By age 11, Macaulay became the 2nd youngest person ever to host Saturday Night Live, right after Drew Barrymore. It should have been a dream moment, but even that came with Kit's fingerprints all over it. Kit didn't want Mac using cue cards on live television. He thought it made him look unprepared, so he forced Mac to memorize everything: sketches, monologues, timing, creating chaos for the rest of the cast who relied on those cue cards. For a kid who just wanted to blend in, Kit made sure everyone knew his son was different. This is where the tension between Mac and his father deepened. Despite the global success of Home Alone, the family hadn't suddenly become rich. Macaulay made just $100,000 for the film. Kit, aware that the entire industry now wanted his son, pushed aggressively to keep the momentum going. His next move was negotiating Mac's salary for My Girl, a massive jump to $1 million.
Better not tell anyone.
Oh, I remember this movie too.
Well,
Dang, I've seen a
Cincinnati.
lot of movies with bro in it. I ain't gonna lie.
As Macaulay's workload increased, Kit began traveling with him to every shoot, staying on set for long stretches and managing every part of his day. Child actor regulations required a guardian to be closely involved, and Kit filled that role completely, often to the exclusion of everything else. He stopped working, lived off Mac's income, and treated his son's career as his own second chance. They spent more time together than with anyone else during those years, yet they were never truly connected. And as Macaulay's fame exploded, the distance between them and the pressure placed on him only grew. Before long, being recognized in public stopped being an occasional inconvenience. It became constant, overwhelming, and impossible to escape. He could barely walk down a street without being swarmed, and even when he tried to hide, it didn't matter.
One time I wore a ski mask and I was walking down the street, this guy goes, I heard him just whispering, "Is that the kid from Home Alone?" I'm like, wearing a ski mask. Boy, I better get my plans. I better get a facelift or something,
Moments like these were all too common. To the world, he was the happiest kid alive, the face of the biggest movie on Earth. But inside, Mac felt isolated. His siblings couldn't relate to the kind of pressure he was under. Fame had pulled him into a world no one around him could understand, except for one person. Someone who'd lived a childhood that mirrored his in unsettling ways: Michael Jackson. Both Macaulay and Michael grew up with fathers who treated their children less like kids and more like instruments for their own ambitions. Joe Jackson pushed the Jackson 5 into superstardom through harsh discipline. The physical punishments, the relentless rehearsals, the constant criticism. Michael spoke openly about the fear he felt around his father, and Mac recognized pieces of his own life in those stories. Both were unusually talented, both had their childhoods consumed by fame, and both, in different ways, felt resented by the men who depended on them. To Macaulay, Michael wasn't a superstar. He was the only adult who actually understood him.
What Michael went through as a child, he had to grow up so fast that he related to what you went through as a child, and I think in a way he was trying to protect you.
Yeah, I was a peerless person. You know, I was like, yeah, like nobody else in my Catholic school even had like this much idea of what I was going through, you know, or what and like he was the kind of person who'd like, yeah, been through the exact same freaking thing and wanted to make sure that like I wasn't alone in that kind of.
He used to tell me that very few people besides Michael could really understand that kind of white-hot attention.
As their relationship deepened, Macaulay's career milestones kept coming. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, hit theaters in 1992 and became another massive success. Mac was paid $4.5 million, a staggering amount for a child actor at the time, and the film brought in almost $360 million worldwide. Critics initially complained it was a rehash, but over time it settled into the same holiday rotation and became a Christmas classic in its own right.
We can steal all the kiddies' charity money. Shut up, Mark!
By this point, Mac wasn't just famous, he was being talked about as the biggest child star since Shirley Temple, and for many, the defining kid actor of his generation. And as his fame skyrocketed, so did his father's power. Anyone who wanted Macaulay for a movie had to go through Kit Culkin.
Your father was described as the father from hell.
Oh, yes, I remember that. I remember him sitting on the phone, screaming his head off at God knows who. And I mean, that was a daily thing. And it was just the way my father was, so I just kind of accepted it.
In 1993, Premiere Magazine ranked Kit the 48th most powerful person in Hollywood, ahead of names like Michael Douglas and Eddie Murphy. Inside the industry, studios complained that he tried to assert control over creative decisions on Mac's films, clashing with directors and producers. His reputation was souring fast, and things were about to take a turn. After years of playing charming, mischievous heroes, 12-year-old Macaulay stepped into a very different role with The Good Son, a psychological thriller where he played Henry, a deeply disturbed child capable of murder.
Hey, I've seen this too.
The movie earned about $60 million worldwide on a $17 million budget. It may have looked like a step down compared to Home Alone, but given the darker genre and lack of holiday appeal, it was still a solid showing. Critics were divided. Some praised Mac's commitment to the darker role, while others felt he was miscast. But commercially, it worked. The problem was, Macaulay himself was barely holding on. He told his father he needed a break, that he just wanted to do the things normal kids did, like go to school. Kit said, yeah, sure. But almost immediately, Mac was back on another set, starting another movie, trapped in the same cycle he'd been living for years. And that's when it finally clicked. He had no way out.
Did you have any say in whether or not you worked when you were young?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Like it was, after a while it became, like I said, a job, and it was, I never chose the projects. They were like my parents, like, you know, essentially like chose them for me.
So they
so
were
it was
like,
kind of
good news, Macaulay.
Yeah, exactly. You know, yeah. They called me Macaulay.
To make his own decisions,
Macaulay felt truly powerless. He was earning millions, enough to buy his family anything they wanted. But Kit made him sleep on the couch, not because there wasn't room for a bed or because they couldn't afford one. Kit did it because he could, because he wanted Mac to remember, every single night, exactly who was in charge. Then came 1994, the year everything fell apart. The Nutcracker, Getting Even with Dad, The Pagemaster, Richie Rich, 4 films back to back, and audiences were exhausted. Macaulay was earning an unprecedented $8 million per film, around $16.5 million in today's money, making him the highest paid child actor in history. But the box office returns were fading fast. Richie Rich was the only moderate success, and even that worked largely because it recycled the Home Alone formula. The others flopped. Critics were brutal, and by the end of that year, Mac had been nominated for 3 Golden Raspberry
Bro, I
Awards,
seen a
Hollywood's
lot of
anti-Oscars for
bro
worst
fam.
performances. He was 14 years old, and the industry was already treating him like he was washed up. And privately, Macaulay wasn't fighting it. He was exhausted and desperate for a way off the treadmill his father kept him on. The breaking point came when Mac went away for a weekend without telling Kit.
Your mother said your father was drunk and abusive. He was, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
At one point, you called the police about your father.
Yeah. I went off somewhere for the weekend, and I didn't tell him. And he got he got angry with me, and gave me a nice swipe across the cheek, and I just went down. And then he told me to get up. And I said, and I looked at him, I was like, I'm not gonna fight you, because I knew that's what he wanted me to do. He gave me another one. And my brother had walked into the apartment or something like that, and I just said, you know, F you, I'm gonna, and I closed my door, locked it, called the cops on him.
He wanted him to know that he wasn't going to let him get away with those kinds of things anymore. Macaulay's professional collapse turned out to be a blessing for him, but it was a disaster for his family. His parents' relationship had been crumbling for years, held together only by the money Mac brought in. Now that the roles were drying up and the income was slowing, there was nothing left to keep them together. In 1995, Macaulay's mother, Patricia, filed for divorce and full custody of the children. What followed was a brutal, very public custody battle that dragged on for 2 full years. Mac's life became tabloid fodder. Photographers camped outside their apartment. Reporters shouted questions at him on the street, and every detail of the Culkin family dysfunction was splashed across newspapers and gossip shows. That's when Mac learned things he'd never known. His parents were never married, and his trust fund was reportedly worth $50 million. They'd hidden a lot from him, and it soon became clear that both parents saw custody not as a question of love, but as a question of control. Whoever had Mac had access to his fortune, and Mac could see it playing out in real time. Patricia was draining her resources fighting Kit in court, and Kit was using every ounce of power he had left to maintain his grip on the one true asset he'd ever had, his son. Mac didn't want to live with his father, but he also didn't want to keep being the prize in a fight between his parents. So at just 15 years old, he made a decision that would change everything. He petitioned the court to remove both of his parents' names from his trust fund. It wasn't emancipation. He didn't sever ties completely. He simply took them out of the financial equation and appointed an independent executor to oversee the money. From there, the legal battle lost its fuel. On the final day of the trial, after 2 years of bitter warfare, Kit Culkin didn't show up. He'd been fighting for control, for access, for power. But when he realized the court was going to rule against him, he just quit. He packed up his belongings, stole all of Mac's childhood memorabilia, like photos, awards, and keepsakes, then left town. No note, no goodbye, no explanation.
I knew that my upbringing was unique. I knew it was different. But at the same time, it's kind of it's not until you get some perspective, some life experience, until you really realize that, oh wait, this was particularly weird.
At just 14 years old, Macaulay Culkin effectively retired from acting, and he wouldn't appear in another movie for almost a decade. After the custody battle ended, Macaulay tried something he'd never really experienced before, a normal teenage life. He enrolled at the Professional Children's School in New York, not because he cared about grades, but because he wanted to know what normal even felt like. For the first time, Macaulay actually had freedom. He dyed his hair pink, smoked, drank, and acted out. Anything that felt like...
Yeah, man, just goes to show you, bro. Still about balance, man. You know what I'm saying? All of those responsibilities that bro had, he just wanted to be a kid, man.
Like the opposite of the rigid, controlled life he'd grown up in. And at just 17, he married fellow actor Rachel Miner, who he'd had a whirlwind romance with. The tabloids watched his every move and turned it into a spectacle. By 2000, at age 20, he started wondering if he could return to acting, but only on his own terms. He flew to London and starred in the play Madame Melville, far from the Hollywood machine, and critics praised the performance. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe on stage. It reminded him of what acting felt like before it became something his father used to control him. Encouraged, he returned to film. In 2003, he took the lead in Party Monster, a dark biographical drama meant to break his child star image. But the gamble didn't pay off. Party Monster was supposed to be Macaulay's big return, a dark adult role that proved he wasn't the kid from Home Alone anymore. Instead,
heck is
critics
this?
tore it apart. It collapsed with a 29% Rotten Tomatoes score and earned less than $1 million on a $5 million budget. Fans had moved on. He was too old to appeal to kids, and the adults who'd grown up with him weren't looking for him anymore. He took a small supporting role in the indie comedy Saved the following year. It was mildly successful, and critics noted that Mac was still a natural performer, but it wasn't a comeback. It didn't restart his career. If anything, it confirmed the truth he'd been avoiding. The world wasn't waiting for him. And then things got worse. Pulled over for speeding in Oklahoma City, police found marijuana, Xanax, and clonazepam in his car, none prescribed.
Damn.
Overnight, he was branded another child star gone wrong. His mugshot spread everywhere. The narrative wrote itself. And in the years that followed, the spiral continued. After 4 years together, Macaulay and his wife Rachel Miner divorced. Soon after, he began dating Mila Kunis. Their relationship was almost completely private. No red carpets, no press, no Hollywood circus. They'd both grown up under the same pressure, understood fame at its worst, and leaned on each other quietly for support. But while his personal life had some stability, his career didn't. The failed comeback, the bad press, the arrest, it all added up, and Hollywood lost interest. Mac felt completely lost and unsure of himself. Then, in 2005, he received a call for help from an old friend. Michael Jackson was facing the most serious accusations of his life: child molestation, furnishing alcohol to a minor, and a wide-ranging conspiracy charge that included alleged attempts at coercion and false imprisonment. It was a case that dominated global headlines. Jackson's entire career and freedom were on the line. And Macaulay wasn't just another famous name connected to the story. He'd been part of Michael's world. The Culkin family had been regular guests at Neverland Ranch, Michael's sprawling amusement park-like estate, complete with rides, arcade games, and a private movie theater. Michael frequently invited children and their families to stay there, and Macaulay was one of them. He's openly said he slept in Michael's bedroom a dozen or more times. So when a former Neverland Ranch cook testified that he'd witnessed Michael groping Mac at 3 a.m. in 1991, when Mac was just 10 years old, the media exploded. Every network wanted his response.
The relationship that you had with Michael Jackson.
Had or have? I mean, it's kind of,
both.
you know, whatever.
Let's go with had.
Listen, no, he's a good friend of mine, and he still is. I mean, everything that's going on, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate situation for everyone involved. And
what happened at the house? That's what all these things
it's,
people
you know,
are
that's
concerned
what's
about.
so weird, you know.
What did happen?
Nothing happened, you know. I mean, nothing really. I mean, we played video games, you know. We you know, played it as an amusement park. Well, the thing is with that whole thing is that, you know, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him. It's like, I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories, and it has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario.
Once he was named publicly, Macaulay made a decision. He would take the stand. Just before testifying, he ran into Michael in the courthouse bathroom. They hugged but didn't speak. They couldn't risk the appearance of coaching. Then Mac walked into that courtroom and told the jury exactly what he told the world. Michael Jackson had never touched him inappropriately. If he had ever seen something wrong, he wouldn't hide it. His testimony helped undermine one of the prosecution's key themes. And 1 month later, in June 2005, Michael was acquitted on all counts. For Mac, Michael had been the only adult who treated him like a kid instead of a product. And when the world turned on him, Mac stood by him. Although it thrust him into headlines, the trial didn't change Mac's career. It only reminded Hollywood how far he drifted from the spotlight. He told Time magazine, "I don't know where I fit in Hollywood anymore. I'm the most out-of-work actor I know." He even considered quitting entirely to pursue sports management. In 2006, he released a semi-autobiographical novel called Junior, a stream-of-consciousness attempt to process everything he'd been through. He said he hoped people wouldn't think he was crazy. He just needed to make sense of his childhood. For a couple of years, Mac drifted. He had Mila, he had stability, but he didn't have purpose, and that fragile balance was about to collapse. In 2008, everything changed. Macaulay received the kind of call no one is prepared for. His older sister, Dakota, had been walking home from Brennan's Bar in West Los Angeles when she was struck by a vehicle. The driver stopped immediately and tried to help. She was rushed to UCLA Medical Center with severe head trauma, but despite every attempt to save her, she passed away on December 10th. Dakota had always stayed far away from the spotlight. There are barely any public photos of her, and that was intentional. But her death devastated the entire Culkin family. And for Mac, it created a wound he carried for years. The tragedy marked the beginning of the darkest period of his life. public photos of Macaulay became increasingly alarming. He looked thin,
Yeah, this
exhausted,
when I
and
started
deeply
sharing,
unwell.
bro, again.
Major outlets pushed reckless stories claiming he was addicted to heroin and that he only had months to live. None of it was backed by evidence. The tabloids saw a wounded man and an old drug arrest record and built an entire child star downfall narrative. It was a kick in the teeth for Macaulay, who was at the lowest point of his entire life. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he couldn't find a reason to get out of bed. And then came another blow. In June 2009, Michael Jackson passed away. The man who had understood his childhood better than anyone else was suddenly gone. For Mac, it felt like the ground was collapsing beneath him. His family, his public image, and now one of the closest friendships he'd ever had, gone. 2 years later, in 2011, he and Mila Kunis ended their 8-year relationship. The details were private, but Mila later admitted she had handled the breakup poorly. Whatever the reasons, the timing only deepened Macaulay's sense of isolation. The darkness hung over Macaulay for years, but eventually he began to pull himself out. In 2013, he started a comedy music group called the Pizza Underground, making pizza-themed covers of Velvet Underground songs. On their first tour, they were booed off stage in Nottingham after 15 minutes, but Mac kept going, touring the US and Europe for 2 years. It was messy, weird, and intentionally ridiculous, and it was exactly what he needed, a way to laugh at himself before anyone else could. That same year, he left the chaos behind entirely and moved to Paris.
What was it that brought you to Paris?
Well, the food sucks, the wine's terrible, and the women are ugly. But otherwise, it's fantastic. Yeah. No, it's like it was an agreeable lifestyle. I had a bunch of friends out there. They were always asking me, when are you going to move to Paris and when are you going to learn French?
He took the plunge, and for 4 years, Mac lived quietly in France. For the first time since childhood, he felt normal. People recognized him, but they didn't care. He could walk down the street, sit in a cafe, blend in. There were no paparazzi and no tabloids. Paris gave him space to heal without the world watching. The thing that eventually pulled him back to the States wasn't career-related at all. It was Brenda's song. The two met while filming Changeland in 2018, a small indie project Mac took on for fun. Brenda, best known as London Tipton from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, connected with Mac instantly. Mac thought the relationship was too good to be true. He genuinely expected her to leave, like others had, but she didn't. They got engaged, and they've been together ever since. For years, Mac insisted he'd never have children. His upbringing was too traumatic, too heavy. But in 2021, Brenda gave birth to their son, Dakota, named after Mac's late sister. In 2022, their second son, Carson, was born. Becoming a father changed him. It gave him purpose and a kind of joy he never thought he'd experience. His relationship with Brenda sparked a creative rebirth too. He launched the comedy podcast Bunny Ears, took on new TV roles and voiceover work, and made a surprisingly strong acting comeback in American Horror Story in 2021. After many years doing his best to stay out of view, he's now comfortable being seen. Mac stays active on social media and appears on interviews and podcasts again, just like he used to. It's clear he's the happiest and healthiest he's been in a long time.
I'm able to kind of live the life that, you know, like that, that my circumstances afforded me. I'm like I said, I'm very, very, very lucky. You know, lots of weird things happen to kids all the time, all around the world, every day. You know, I have something to show for it.
In recent years, his father's health has deteriorated, but Mac refuses to let his children meet him. Given everything Kit put him through, it's hard to blame him. Mac isn't driven by revenge. He's driven by protection. His sons will never experience what he did.
Oh, I haven't spoken to him in 30-something years. Oh, he deserves it too. You know, he's a man who he had 7 kids, and now he has 4 grandkids, and none of them want anything to do with him. He's the worst person I've ever known in my entire life.
On December 1st, 2023, Mac received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Brenda and their 2 sons were there. So was Catherine O'Hara, his mom from Home Alone. When Mac took the podium, he didn't talk about his career or his comeback. He talked about Brenda.
You are absolutely everything. You're not only the best woman I've ever known, you're the best person I've ever known. Giving me all my purpose. You give me family.
It was truly heartfelt, and he ended the speech the way only Macaulay Culkin could.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animals.
The line forever tied to Kevin McAllister, delivered by a 43-year-old man who'd finally made peace with his past. Macaulay Culkin's story is one of the strangest contradictions in Hollywood. A child who reached the absolute peak of fame before he even understood what fame was, and spent the rest of his life trying to escape it. To some, he'll always be Kevin McAllister, the kid who conquered Christmas. To others, he's the poster child for early stardom gone wrong. but the truth sits somewhere in between. He survived an abusive father who treated him like a lottery ticket. He survived a level of fame that would overwhelm most adults. And he survived years of scrutiny, rumors, and media exploitation. Yet somehow, after all of it, he still found a way out. His story...
Shout out to bro, man. Yeah, so, you know what I'm saying? Ultimately, let me just close out. Ultimately, yeah, like, he's not a failed star, bro. You know, we know plenty of stars that couldn't overcome drugs, couldn't find new purpose. And so, bro, you know, he found himself. He became self-assured. As soon as he seen that smile on his face, when he got Brenda and all that, like, you just knew he was more self-assured. He's in a place where, so I said, bro, you always got to go through a period of healing, which is what he did when he went to Paris. So, yeah, man, you know, I came back at the right time. What? Got anything to say to the people, bro?
Man, Merry Christmas, you filthy animals.
Oh, God.